welcome back to my very sporadic countdown of Christmas to Christmas. So I know the last couple of videos I have been wearing the same shirt, but I want to get as many videos out to you guys as I possibly can. So I am just kind of doing a bunch right now so that I can just, edit, research, get more out to you. So today we are going to be talking about a scary Elf on the Shelf story. And this is actually a creepypasta, which I don't think I have ever done on my channel before. I think this is a first. Anyways, mostly all of you probably know what Elf on the Shelf is. It's a fairly new tradition where there's this cute little elf and they are sent from the North Pole as like a scout to watch over their children to make sure that they're being, nice, and if they are either nice or naughty, they slip out of the house at night and report back to Santa. So that's why you find them in various, doing various things when you wake up and stuff. But I was wondering if there were any creepy accounts or stories about Elf on the Shelf. And I did find one. So I'm actually going to read this right from my phone. I'm hoping that it lasts because it's only like 10%. So fingers crossed, you guys, because I don't know if the charger will reach where I'm sitting. So fingers crossed. So grab a drink, a snack, and let's dive in. So this goes. Growing up, or at least since the mid-2000s, my house always had an elf on the shelf during the Christmas season. If you don't know, elves on the shelf are these little elf dolls that are supposed to be scouts for Santa Claus. I named mine Humble. I think I was trying to name him Humboldt, but got the words confused. Though I've long forgotten why I wanted to name him Humboldt in the first place. Anyway, starting every Thanksgiving, my parents would stick Humble somewhere he could practice his domestic espionage, and at night he would head back to the North Pole to snitch on me to Santa. He always flew back before dawn, always hiding someplace new, and each morning was like a miniature Easter egg hunt to find him. Of course, it was my parents who moved the damn thing every night. I guess I have some mixed feelings about this tradition. On the other hand, it was fun and magical, but on the other hand, it's a pretty aggressive expansion on the practice of using Santa to keep your kids in line. Which yes and no, because Santa is amazing. Like the belief in Santa, the belief in magic, like all of that stuff is incredible. Anyways, I've also heard people say it normalizes government and corporate surveillance. But in the age of Alexa and Google, that's a bit of a moot point, which that's weird to add. But I think the weirdest thing about the Elf on the Shelf is how I was never allowed to touch the doll. So touching the doll is supposed to, like if you touch the doll, it loses its magic. So that's why you're not allowed to touch the doll. I could talk to him, tell him what I wanted Santa to bring me for Christmas and all that, but touching him might drain him of his magic and keep him from returning to the North Pole where he belongs. Here's the actual line from the storybook that comes with the doll. There's only one rule that you have to follow, so I will come back in here tomorrow. Please do not touch me, my magic might go, and Santa won't hear all I've seen or I know. Obviously, the taboo against touching the doll makes it harder for a kid to conceive that it's actually their parents moving it around, or worse, testing that hypothesis, which to me really feels exceptionally manipulative. That might be because I never actually touched Humble, even years after I stopped believing in Santa, which I don't think it's manipulative. So I guess I could rationalize it as not touching him for their sake, but part of me just can never overcome the taboo about not touching the doll that my mother had instilled in me. I'm 18 now and in college, living in an off-campus apartment. I went home for Thanksgiving, of course, and sure enough, Humble was there on the mantelpiece. My sister Jenna loves it full-heartedly, believing he's magic and works for Santa Claus. When I got up Sunday morning, the day I was supposed to head back to my apartment, my mother asked me as convertedly as she could if I knew where Humble was. He was missing, and no one in my house seemed to know where he went, or would be likely to play such a cruel trick on the youngest member. When he couldn't be found, my mom took Jenna aside and tried to explain that Humble must have been storm stayed at Santa's workshop. To everyone's surprise, Jenna was delighted at the news. She said that she told Humble that she worried about me living away from home and asked if he could spend some time at my apartment to make sure I was safe, and that's where he must be. My mother eagerly went along with this since it gave her time to find a replacement doll, and told me to call as soon as I got to my apartment to confirm that Humble was safe and sound. Wink, wink. I promised to call the second I got back, and after saying my farewells, I embarked on the hours-long drive back to my apartment. I managed to get back before dark, which of course comes obscenely early this time of year. And as I awkwardly tried to make my way through the door with all my travel bags at once, I caught a glimpse of something bright red standing out against the off-white of my kitchenette. It was Humble, sitting on top of my Keurig, with his legs crossed and his hands in his lap. I knew it was Humble, because my mother had put a bell from a Lindt chocolate bunny around his waist, like a belt, and stuck a miniature candy cane in it. The normally upsetting situation of someone breaking into my apartment was tempered by the fact that it had obviously been a member of my family. But who? And why? Instead of calling them like I promised, I took a picture and texted it to my mom with the message, "Did you do this?" Moments later, the following conversation ensued. "Sweetie, why would you steal Humble? You know how much your sister loves him." "Mom, I swear, I didn't steal him. I just found him here when I got home. If you didn't do this, check to make sure you still have my spare key, because I know I locked up before I left." "Okay, I just checked. It's right where it should be. I asked your father, and he doesn't know anything either. He's looking over the security footage to make sure we weren't broken into, sweetie. I swear we didn't do this. Maybe you should come back home or stay in a hotel until we figure this out." At this point, I've searched my entire apartment for any sign of forced entry, a hidden intruder, something missing or damaged, and found absolutely nothing. The only thing out of place is Humble, and it made no sense. The most likely explanation was that someone in my family was messing with me, but I couldn't think of anyone who would do this to me, and Jenna, let alone, have been able to have a stolen Humble, drive to my apartment, place it, and then drive back undetected. The only other rational explanation was that I had a very stealthy, very skilled stalker who'd chosen an oddly specific way to mess with me. Of course, there was an obvious irrational explanation for where Humble came from, but I shut down that line of thought immediately. It's just a doll. I really didn't want to drive anymore, and I decided I couldn't miss class the next day or waste money on a hotel. So I asked my boyfriend to spend the night. He was more than happy to oblige. That still left the issue of what to do with Humble. Obviously, I should have just mailed him back home, but that would have required that I move him. That had to be why they did it. They knew I was still afraid to touch Humble, and they were teasing me. That had to be it. However they did it, that had to be it. This was good though, I thought. My unwillingness to touch Humble was childish, and I was all grown up now. I needed to move past it. The doll was sitting right there on my coffee machine. All I had to do was grab him, put him in a box, and ship him out. My little sister gets her doll back, and I become just a little bit more mature. There was no rational reason not to do it. I honestly can't tell you how long I just stood there, staring at Humble, trying to muster up the courage to pick him up. It was ridiculous, but I just couldn't do it. My mother had ingrained that taboo into me, and touching Humble would be like crushing a fairy. "Hey, Humble," I started mumbling. "I know my sister asked you to keep an eye on me, and I know you're just trying to make her happy, but you're supposed to be watching her to report back to Santa, remember? I know you used to watch me, but I'm grown up now. I don't even get presents from Santa anymore. You don't need to watch me, and I'd hate for you to report on Jenna to be, or your report on Jenna to be inaccurate, because you're here and not there. So please, after you report back to the North Pole tonight, go back to Jenna and let her know I'm doing okay." I opened the cupboard and pulled out a pack of blueberry turnovers, placing one beside Humble. That's for Santa. I know it's probably not his favorite kind of cookie, but it's all I have right now. Merry Christmas, Humble." I don't know why I said those things. I don't know why I gave him the cookie. I didn't actually believe he was one of Santa's elves. At least, I don't think I did. My boyfriend Sean arrived shortly after that. If he noticed Humble, he didn't mention it. I decided that if I still couldn't find the will to box up Humble in the morning, I just asked Sean to do it for me. I woke up the next morning in a considerably better mood. Sean was still sound asleep beside me, per usual, and then I remembered Humble, and that I would have to move him to make my coffee. I thought about waking Sean up for it, but told myself I was being ridiculous and to just do it myself. But when I opened my bedroom door and looked into my kitchenette, Humble was gone, and so was the cookie. My first thought was that Sean must have moved him at some point, but the only time he ever got out of bed was to use the washroom, which was just adjacent to the bedroom and didn't attach to the living area. He had proven himself time and time again to be completely incapable of getting out of bed without waking me up, so there was no way he went out there while I was sleeping. Even if he had, he never would have cleaned up the cookie. He might have eaten it, and then would have gone for more and left the package out. I immediately started searching for Humble, trying to find where in my tiny apartment he possibly could have gone, when I heard a notification from my phone, specifically the one I had set for a text from my sister. Sudden dread swept over me. Fear of something that should have been impossible somehow becoming the only conceivable explanation. I picked up my phone, swiped it open, and when I clicked on messages, I saw a photo of Humble sitting on my sister's bed with the accompanying text. "Humble is back. He wants me to tell you that Santa says thank you for the blueberry cookie. Chocolate chip's his favorite, but it was still yummy." I was in shock after that. I didn't know what to think. How could someone have stolen the doll, brought it here, snuck it out again, and then brought it home without leaving any sort of evidence? And why? I got another text from my mom later, who seemed content to write the whole thing off as me and my sister playing a trick on her, as payback for everything she ever did or ever made us believe about the doll. I insisted we weren't, but soon gave up. I couldn't blame my mom for thinking that. It's what I would have thought if I was in her position. I wish I had been in her position, instead of trying to figure out if I was being stalked, haunted by a possessed doll, or just going insane. I was able to rule out the first option fairly quickly. I set up my phone to record the living room during the night. Nobody came in the front door, and there wasn't the slightest sound of anyone coming in through any windows. And yet, come morning, there was Humble, cozied up in the camera's blind spot. There was no way anyone could have put him there. I still couldn't move him though, and I was through talking to him. This time, Sean did ask about the doll, but all I told him was, "It's my sister, don't touch it," and he shrugged it off. I set up my phone to record Humble that night, but it automatically restarted for updates, and Humble escapes back to my sister, unseen. It's been going on like this for weeks now. Humble goes back and forth between me and my sister. I've had Sean over every night, but I didn't tell him why though. Just that I was stressed with exams and the holiday, and that I wanted as much time together as possible before Christmas break. I don't know what I thought he was protecting me from. Humble was just a doll, and he had never shown any signs that he meant me harm. He was just a scout elf doing his job. It's funny that the phenomenon that was causing me so much terror was delighting my sister, and would have delighted me when I was younger. To Jenna, a toy moving on its own was all part of the holiday magic. To me, it was an omen that the world did not operate the way that I thought it did, and forced me to question my very sanity. Yesterday, Friday the 20th, was the last day of classes. Humble was with my sister, and my boyfriend caught an overnight Greyhound to his family. So it was the first night in nearly 3 weeks that I was on my own. My plan was to drive back to my family on Saturday, since I didn't want to drive that far in the dark. This would of course mean I'd be left alone with Humble when he returned in the morning. I woke up this morning. I reached over to try to nudge my boyfriend to get me some coffee, only to remember he wasn't there. I groaned and forced myself out of bed, stumbled out into the living area, and just as I had expected, I'm greeted by Humble. Except that today, he's leaned up against the front door. I can't leave the apartment. Not without moving him. I was trapped. I completely broke down then, dropping down to my knees and sobbing, demanding to know why he was tormenting me like this. I hadn't done anything other than grow up. That's when I realized, since I was crying and screaming at a doll, maybe I wasn't as grown up as I thought. I had thought that taking on 5 figures in student loans and settling for a practical boyfriend had all meant I was an adult. But I guess that was wrong. Humble was supposed to get his power from the love of the child who owned him, and that used to be me. I guess that by never overcoming my reluctance to move him, I never really broke that bond, and he was legitimately split between me and Jenna. That really was it then, wasn't it? All I had to do was shove him aside. I could even just ask someone to come over, and when they came, and Humble would just be pushed out of the way. But even that felt wrong somehow. As harrowing as this entire experience had been, there was still some part of me that was enchanted by the magic of it all. A part of me that most people lost a long time ago. And it was a part of that I still wasn't ready to give up. And what about Jenna, my sweet little sister who loves her elf doll and still wanted to share him with me so that she'd know I'd be safe on my own? I couldn't take away her experiencing actual Christmas magic, could I? I took another photo of Humble and texted it to Jenna, explaining that he had trapped me inside and I wouldn't be coming home until tomorrow. She understood completely. She would never dare to move Humble either. Of course, a few minutes later I got a call from my mom and she was livid. I'm still in my apartment right now. Humble hasn't moved, of course, and I can't force myself to move him. I'm not mad at him. I don't think he's doing this to hurt me. I think he just honestly believes I'm still one of his kids, and he's doing his job the best he can. Today's been rough, but tomorrow will be better. He'll head back to my sister, I'm sure. Why wouldn't he? That's what he's been doing for the past 3 weeks. He'll be out of my way, and I'll be able to leave and head back home. My mom will have calmed down and just be happy to have me home and everything. We'll be perfect. All that matters is that with me and my sister under the same roof, Humble will stay put until Christmas Eve. And then the nightmare will be before Christmas, will be over. At least until next year. So I think the idea of something like a toy or something that's all cat hair, moving on its own is definitely super freaky. But I want to know if you guys have had a elf on the shelf experience, like a paranormal or just a Christmas magical experience with elf on the shelf. Definitely drop that down in the comments below if you have. I keep pulling my hair. But definitely drop that down in the comments below if you have and what you think of the story. I think it's actually quite beautiful. I think that it's, he never quite forgot her, and as soon as the sister asked him to watch over her, he did his job, and that was so comforting to the little sister. So I don't think it's so much scary, but I guess I'd be a little freaked out if that happens. But let me know what you guys think about this. Let me know if you guys have had experiences with toys moving on their own or elf on the shelf, and what your Christmas family tradition is. I don't really have one. I'm so excited to make them with Jeff and Sebastian and come up with our own traditions. So let me know what your guys' traditions are down below, and if you like this video, definitely give it a big thumbs up. And if you are not subscribed yet, definitely make sure to hit that subscribe button. It would mean so much to me, you guys. I hope that you guys have an amazing holiday, and until next time, I love you.